Original footage of the beach landings on D-Day is rare, even more so for the assault waves on the Juno Beach sector. In this video, we look at the location this footage was taken from, and we find the same houses that you can see in this footage. We also answer the question, just who was this man and what happened to him? The 1944 Battle of Normandy was one of the pivotal events of the Second World War and the scene of some of Canada's greatest feats of arms in its military history. But before we get into it, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, World of Warships. World of Warships is a free-to-play game and is available for PC, but it's not just a game, it's a floating digital museum displaying breathtaking recreations of not just the most fearsome vessels of the First and Second World Wars, but also many blueprints and designs of ships that never saw battle. These ships have been given a new lease of life in the game's virtual dockyards. If you want to experience the awesome firepower of the very ships that bombarded the landing beaches on D-Day, then this is the game designed for you. Check the link in my video description for more. And during registration, use the code WARSHIPS to get exclusive rewards including a bunch of doubloons, credits, premium account time, and a free ship after you complete 15 battles. So we're here on Juno Beach at Bernier-sur-Mer. Nearly 150,000 Allied troops landed or parachuted into the invasion area on D-Day, including 14,000 Canadians who landed here at Juno Beach. This building is Canada House, synonymous with the conflict that day, as over 100 Canadian soldiers were killed within sight of this building. So let's look at the ground in general. Firstly, this is the Juno Beach sector. The town of Courcelles-sur-Mer is on the western flank. Then we'll progress east to Bernier-sur-Mer, Saint-Aubin-sur-Mer, and then Langeron-sur-Mer. Each of these locations had a Widerstandsnest or a strong point. The beach was separated by D-Day planners into Mike and Nan sectors, which were further separated to Nan Red, White, and Green sectors, and then Mike Red and Green sectors. We will look at this area west of Widerstandsnest 27. So let's look at the ground in detail. This is the location where the North Shore Regiment landed on D-Day. We will focus on A Company, commanded by Major Archie McNaughton, a 47-year-old veteran of World War I. So I'm hoping what I can do is show many of you where this house is located, so that when you come to Juno Beach yourself, if you don't already know where it is, hopefully this is going to help you find the location. We're just walking down the promenade now, and I've seen where the house is on Google Maps, on Street View. It's not the easiest house to find, I must say. It's not in the location I thought it was in, but going to head there now and I'll show you exactly where it is, and I'll try and get a view of how that house looked in that original footage. I'll see if I can get out to where the landing craft came ashore and the doors opened on D-Day. This is an extract from the unit war diary. It reads, H hour was 07:45 hours. A Company and B Company touched down at 08:10 hours. Crossing the beach itself, only a few casualties occurred, but Lieutenant M. Keefe and several of his platoon became casualties in houses that had been booby-trapped. These houses were along the beach. Other than this, A Company reached the line of the beachhead by 09:48 hours, casualties numbering 24. We're currently on Juno Beach and we're walking along what's essentially a promenade between Saint-Aubin-sur-Mer and Bernier-sur-Mer, and we're looking for the location where the well, really the only existing landing footage taken on Juno Beach was filmed. It's really quite special footage, and there's a really poignant moment that perhaps I'll overlay onto this, where a young soldier looks around over his shoulder at perhaps a senior NCO or someone who's more senior, who just lays a comforting hand on his shoulder. And you can see probably an older soldier who's got a wedding band on. You can see that the soldier's absolutely terrified, and the soldier just puts a comforting hand on his shoulder. Now let's look at that amazing footage of A Company landing right here at Juno Beach on D-Day.
Lay me down in the cold, cold ground, wherefore many more have gone. Lay me down in the cold, cold ground.
So ignore that large building to the right. That building doesn't exist anymore. Directly over the doors, you can see the narrow 2-story building with a chimney on the right-hand side of the roof. This is our reference building. You can see the sea wall at the base of that, and forward of this, in the near ground, you can see a metal hedgehog on the shore. To the right of our reference building, you can see a smaller outbuilding, about half the size, and this is to be known as the garage. The North Shore New Brunswick Regiment landed on Nan's sector of Juno Beach, near the town of St. Albans-sur-Mer. Despite heavy machine gun and mortar fire, the North Shore's A Company, led by the 47-year-old Major McNaughton, cleared the beachhead and met their first objective on time. The men then entered St. Albans-sur-Mer, where they cleared house by house. The landing craft you can see in this footage is called the LCA, Landing Craft Assault, and there were 142 which were used on Juno Beach alone. They only had 19mm of armour, and they could carry about 36 troops. And these were the same landing craft that were used at Dieppe. Now the next point is the soldier we identified in our footage. The soldier who looks over his shoulder with fear etched onto his face. It is generally accepted that he is Private George Baker, born on August 31st, 1923, on a small farm near North Brookfield in Nova Scotia. And we're going to look at what happened to him, and that building right there is the reference house from our footage. So hopefully you can identify the chimney on the right of the roof. We're now going to walk along the promenade until we get to the house to take a bit of a closer look. And you could just imagine the LCAs coming in ashore just off there, unsure if this was going to be just like another Dieppe, running into another sea wall, just like the one on Blue Beach, where the wall was raked with machine gun fire. This is the building from the footage. I'll try and add the address so you can follow along on Google Earth if you want to. But rather handily, they've added an information board, which I don't think was here the last time I visited. But here's the view down the promenade as your reference point. The house obviously has this extension on the front now, and it does look a lot different. But next door, you can see that smaller timber frame building reference garage. From the beach, you can see the two buildings and the imposing seawall from the view of the soldiers as they assaulted. And here you can see the two buildings in one shot. I've looked for damage on the buildings, but I can't see any. Having cleared houses along the seafront, A Company then progressed inland to Talaville. They came under constant sniping on the approach. Talaville was heavily defended by the Germans, who had dug trenches and tunnels connecting their defensive positions. It was here at Townerville that Major McNaughton was sadly killed. He rounded a corner and was hit by a burst of machine gun fire, along with his signaller and his runner. Of all the officers in the unit, Major McNaughton was undoubtedly the most popular, the most respected, and the most durable. I doubt very much if any other Canadian officer of his age was called upon to lead an infantry company into action. Don't worry if you don't hear from me for some time. This has been a busy time, but I'm awful glad I was in it. No matter how things go, Grace, life has been very kind to us. Archie McNaughton, in a letter to his wife Grace, dated 4th of June 1944. Archie McNaughton was actually shot in the hand at St Albans-sur-Mer. He bandaged the wound himself, and he didn't tell anyone about his injury. His only concern was for the boys that he had lost, on the beaches and in the town, and he mentioned them all by name. The North Shore and the Fort Garry Horse took the village after 6 hours of fighting. By the end of D-Day, the North Shore had suffered 125 casualties, including 34 deaths. Major Archibald McNaughton was the only North Shore officer to lose his life. Right, well, I think this is about as close as we're going to get it. And you can see there the house with that extension on the front now, but that's obviously the house from this picture. You can see the chimney on the right hand side, and you can see the timber framed sort of building to the right hand side, the smaller one. And it was right here where those LCAs came ashore. Private George Baker was a Bren gunner with A Company under the command of Major Archie McNaughton. Their landing craft doors opened and the men poured out under heavy fire. They scrambled over barriers and ran for the security of the sea wall. The war diary records that by 11:15, Hitler's Atlantic Wall had been broken. All company objectives had been achieved, and the North Shore Regiment was in control of St. Alban. George would live his life not knowing about this film. Following D-Day, the regiment pushed south. At some point, George was wounded by friendly fire when the Canadians were attacked by US bombers, but he recovered from his wounds to continue fighting. When the war ended, George returned to Canada. He enrolled in a vocational training school in North Sydney, where he completed a cabinet making course. While in school, George met Madge Edmonds. They fell in love and were married in the spring of 1947. George and Madge raised 5 children, but in 1959, Madge became ill and unfortunately died. She was only 39 years of age. George now struggled to manage his young family. When not working, he loved to spend time with his dogs, hunting, fishing, gardening, and watching the Toronto Blue Jays. He enjoyed his grandchildren and enjoyed showing them how he could unscramble Rubik's Cubes in only 90 seconds. He lived in North Brookfield all his life, and he rarely spoke about the war. George Herman Baker died on the 23rd of July 2003 at 79 years of age. He is buried in the Hillcrest Cemetery in Westfield, Nova Scotia. We're now going to head to the site of some of the worst fighting on Juno Beach at Canada House in Bernier-sur-Mer. So this is Canada House, formerly called the Queen's Own Rifles House, due to the amount of soldiers from that unit that unfortunately died within sight of this building. And you can see in the pictures following D-Day just how ferocious the fighting here was, and by all accounts there was cellar fighting and room-to-room clearances to silence the enemy here. So anyone who thought the Germans surrendered easily here are seriously mistaken. Right, so once the Canadians had assaulted the beach, they had to get the armour off the beach as quickly as possible to get it through the urban areas to clear the buildings. And you can see signs of that today where they progress up this road into the urban areas, because there are track marks all along the pathway here. Now, as someone who spent most of their career in armoured vehicles, if this had happened in a camp or in a barracks, I'm sure anyone who's also been an armoured vehicle will be able to tell you, you would be charged, you would be fined for damaging the pathways, for damaging the curbs, especially on a camp. But this is an excellent sign of the armoured vehicles that were progressing through this area that would have clipped that curb with not a care in the world and progressed on their merry way to go and liberate France.
Now, I absolutely love this footage. It shows the aftermath of the Juno Beach invasion, and it shows the congestion on the beach as the tide started to rise. Lots of armoured vehicles struggled to progress inland, and you can see them blocked up on the beaches here. You can also see the many German prisoners of war who are being processed. But the best part is this French civilian, ironically waving a US flag, who is taunting the German prisoners. And just watch him approach them as he picks up this German helmet and slams it down to the floor. We're now going to visit Benny-sur-Mer Cemetery, one of the largest Canadian cemeteries in Normandy. It's in this Canadian war cemetery at Benny-sur-Mer that 335 soldiers of the 3rd Canadian Division who were engaged in the fighting are buried. Most of these soldiers were killed in June or early July 1944 during the Battle for Caen, and of course on D-Day during the terrible fighting on Juno Beach. Canadian prisoners of war executed by the SS Panzer Hitler Jugend at the Abbey of Den are also buried in this cemetery. There are 2,049 graves here, exceptionally cared for by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, with whom I'm also a volunteer.
We've just come from Canada House, where the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada landed and assaulted, and we found a rifleman, E. Butler, who was unfortunately killed on the 6th of June on D-Day. And he may well have been killed in front of Canada House, where we were stood literally an hour ago.
So having done some digging, we now know that this is Rifleman Edgar D. Butler, the son of James Butler and Annie Thornycroft of Arkona, Ontario. He was born on the 9th of May 1918, and he married Gertrude Donna Harrington. Rifleman Butler was in 14 Platoon of Charlie Company, and he was unfortunately killed by mortar fire in the village of Bernier-sur-Mer on D-Day. 6th of June, 1944. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Coming next, I have the story of the 12th SS Panzer Division massacre of Canadian prisoners of war at the Abbey Ardennes and also the surrounding villages. I want to thank World of Warships for sponsoring this video. Check the link in my video description, and during registration be sure to use the code WARSHIPS to get exclusive rewards. If you want to support this channel in raising funds for veterans, all you have to do is like the video, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. Reaper 17 is the store that I use, so visit their website, which you can find in the description, to get your hands on this top and others just like it. I don't really promote brands on this channel, but I make an exception for this brand. They are veteran owned and veteran operated. All the links you need are in the description below.